Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hey, welcome back. It is your friend Cesar Espino. You can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. Once again, welcome back to your podcast show, You Can Overcome Anything. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Michelle Thompson. And hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good. How are you, Cesar?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. And for our listeners and viewers, I want to give them a little bit of background about who is Michelle Thompson. Okay. So after a life-altering stroke at the age of 36, Michelle had to start all over again. From a successful MBA in finance to a second grade IQ level. And it happened literally overnight. Since her stroke, she had to learn how to automate and outsource as much as possible. And everything that she's doing now in today's, life. Her mission is to help free people from all the unnecessary tasks and stop at not doing anything to help them become and get their freedom back, right? Michelle, that's amazing. Like, just even thinking about that, and for somebody to go through that level of a life-changing event, it must be very difficult. And so maybe let's take it back a little before that. When you were, before this happened, how was your life, right? How was that in terms of your MBA and your career?
Yeah, I was very happy. I used to work at an insurance agent. As an insurance agent, I actually ran their insurance department. And then I actually decided when I finished my MBA that I wanted to kind of go more into the finance side of things. And so I ended up taking a job out in the state of Washington to work on the Hanford project, which so we're basically cleaning up all the atomic waste from World War II. And it was a blast. I loved, so I was what they called a project controls engineer. And so it was my job to make sure that the crew was on schedule and under budget. And yeah, it was a dream job. I had, plenty of income coming in. I was doing well. And then things changed.
Yeah. Before things changed for you, were you doing something that might have led to your stroke? Or, like a lot of times, and what I mean by that, some people, they find out that they have, maybe they're overweight because they're eating too much junk food. So then that creates ADCs or creates something. Was that the case for you, or was it something different?
Yeah, so I have a genetic disorder that we didn't know about. So I was born with something called homozygous factor 5. And what that means is I was lucky enough to get the gene from both my mom and my dad.
Oh, wow.
That means that my blood isn't like a normal human being. So my blood is probably 10 times thicker than a normal human being's. And so my body thinks that it constantly, so when you cut yourself and your body's trying to make a scab.
Yep.
Well, my body's constantly trying to make a scab inside of me because it thinks that it's cut. And so it constantly has these little blood clots just kind of floating around. And one of those blood clots actually shook loose and went up into my brainstem, and that's what caused it.
Wow. And so so obviously that's the difficult part, right? You got it from both parents, and that's not the norm, right? I mean, obviously you were lucky enough to I guess get that, if you put it that way. Nevertheless, though, then you went through this very heroic, life changing event, and you had the stroke, right? What happened in that moment, in terms of your life? I can only imagine, what you were going through.
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on. I was at work, it was a normal day, and all of a sudden it was like somebody cut the computer screen in half, and
Wow.
I could only see half the computer screen. And I thought, what in the world? And so I turned my head, and the wall did the exact same thing. And so I said to my coworkers, I was like, hey guys, I can't see. And they're like, very funny, ha ha ha. And because we used to joke around a lot, we had
Yeah.
a great time.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, seriously, I really can't see. So they called the ambulance and um,
Yeah.
took me to the hospital, and they actually didn't even find it right away. They're like,
Hmm.
what in the world is going on? Because they had checked the brain, but they didn't check the brain stem. And
Got it.
so they sent me home, and they're like, well, just rest. And so the next morning I got up and I was like, well, I feel a little crappy, but I don't really have a reason not to go to work. So
Yeah.
I went to work and sat down at my computer, and it was like somebody had just taken an eraser and just erased all the information in my brain. It was just gone. I had no idea how to do my job. It was
Wow.
weird.
Now,
Yeah,
and you didn't find out about this until the time that this took place, right? Prior to that, you didn't know that you had this.
that's right. Yeah, I had no
Right.
idea. Yep.
Okay. So how did that, obviously, and a lot of that you do now is automation and really working through that. So how did that change your life from just your daily life, right? I mean, like you said, you were happy, you had all these great things going on for yourself, and then all of a sudden this stroke came to play, your life shifted. So what were some of the things that you had to do to adjust to that?
Yeah, so excuse me, I'm sorry. One of the I guess it was I got really lucky in that
Hmm.
the stroke didn't affect my motor skills. It affected my ability to do math and remember vocabulary, but the biggest thing that it did was the doctors explained it to me this way. They said, if you think of your brain as a traffic grid, and
Mm.
there's a whole bunch of red lights and green lights and yellow lights, and so that's what keeps traffic flowing. Things then there's no collisions. Well, your brain no longer has the ability to have red lights or yellow lights.
Mm.
Everything is a green light, and so everything is constantly running into each other because it doesn't know to stop and filter anymore. And so for me, I lost the ability to keep track of things. Anything that had to do step by step or sequentially,
Mm.
forget it. um, but I also get distracted really easily, like even something as simple as the hum from a light.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I could hear that and be mid sentence and then have no idea what I was talking about.
Wow. Okay.
So I had to figure out a way to remind myself of how to do things. And so I turned to automation because I knew I couldn't do it myself. There was no way that I was going to be able to remember, and it's a permanent thing. It's not going to come back.
Yeah.
And so I actually became really, really good at using like the Google Home Assistant.
Mm.
And so I laugh because like that's like my personal caretaker now because at
Yeah.
at 8 o'clock it reminds me to brush my teeth. At 12 o'clock it reminds me to drink water because I
Yeah.
forget. At 2 o'clock it reminds me to take my medicine. So literally throughout all the day. But something even as simple as if I'm cooking, I won't remember to turn the stove off, which is a big problem.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
Right. So I've learned that as soon as I turn the stove on, I say, "Hey Google, remind me in 10 minutes to turn the burner off." And I have to be careful because it'll go off because it's right
Oh.
there.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, there it
sweet.
is. You did.
Yep. Before I go, I'd like to know how satisfied. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, so it literally keeps track of
Right.
everything for me. And so I took it, kind of to the extreme and just learned to automate everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And so, in terms of your recovery, like, I can only imagine that wasn't easy at all. How long was your recovery to kind of get to this point in your life where, like, okay, this is going to be my new, I have to accept this. This is going to be my new life. Now let's make it work. How long was that process before you got to that point?
yeah, so that's a huge that was a huge emotional roller coaster, more
Got it.
than it was physical for me, because like I said, I got lucky. A lot of people won't be able to walk or talk, and I did have trouble talking. I
Yeah.
slurred my speech, but it was something that we could fix. For me, it was you went from having an MBA and relatively educated to second grader
Mm,
overnight, and you can't get that back. And so for me, I refused to accept that.
right.
Um, I went to the doctor and I was 36 when it happened. So, I was like, Dr. Murphy, this is crazy. I can't give up. I've got to at least try.
Right.
And he's like, we'll try, but just so you know, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
Um, and, uh, and so we did, and I did make some progress. I don't stutter or slur anymore. If it's a really bad day, I do.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't really drag my leg too much
Mm,
anymore. But that took a good 6 months just to fix those two things.
yeah.
And then, the physical therapist said, "Hey, okay, we know it's not going to get better. Now, instead of focusing on what's not getting better, let's focus on how do we um, how do we implement tools to help you live as normal as possible." And that's where it was actually my therapist that
Mm,
my physical therapist that said about getting the Google Home, and
mm,
there's all kinds of tracking things on my phone. You probably don't think of this, but I've learned not to carry cash
mm.
because one of the funniest things that it wasn't funny at the time. I cried, but now I can look back and laugh. But I went to Burger King and I got a cheeseburger and I handed him a 20,
Yeah.
and I got $1.25 back. And I had no idea what was wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right, but
Yeah.
something's not right, but I can't tell you what's right. And I was so self-conscious about myself
Yeah.
that I wouldn't say, hey, wait, something's wrong, because I
Right.
couldn't tell them what was wrong. So simple things like learning to use a debit card and then
Mm,
having a transaction. And I still make crazy mistakes, but it's
yeah.
okay though,
Right.
because I found out now that I've accepted it and I relax, I make a whole lot less mistakes than
Right.
I did.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful, and I want to point out a few things that you mentioned for those that are listening to us, and I love this what you just mentioned. Like, you're a huge inspiration. Just going through your journey and understanding, having a lot, and then kind of losing that over, and now reinventing yourself and creating yourself to become who you are now. It's amazing. And part of that, you mentioned a few things that I noted down. Number one is not giving up, right? Regardless of the situation, regardless of the circumstances, what you were facing, you didn't give up. You were continue to push forward. And that's like anything that we have in our lives. A lot of people tend to just give up too easy, and you didn't do that. The other thing is the fact that you wanted to focus on what can I do to make things better for me, right? Instead of focusing on the negativity and focusing on that, and just being victimized of that, you're like, what can I do to focus on making this better for me, and what is available to me. And then the last thing is, the acceptance of not accepting that this is going to be your life, the acceptance of saying, you know what, this might be my life from that perspective, yet I'm going to make it better for me, right? And if we take that from that aspect, I believe that we can definitely accomplish a lot. So for the ones that are listening to us, there's really no excuse, for you guys. There's definitely a way to make things better for you, right? And so either way, you creating different things. That's how you came about automating stuff, right? So give me more about that.
Yeah. So somebody gave me a book that really actually helped, and it was called The Obstacle is the Way. And I do not remember who wrote it, but
Mm-hmm.
basically the premise of the book is the obstacle that you have is actually the answer that you're looking for without you realizing it. So take yourself away and look at it from a different perspective and find out, how do you solve that problem? And so the obstacle that's in front of you is actually your path forward. And that's exactly what happened to me, because my obstacle was I couldn't remember to brush my teeth. I couldn't remember to turn the stove off. I couldn't remember to take the keys out of the car. Like simple everyday things that I had to conquer. And then once we got the system in place and I realized, oh, hey, okay, I could use it for this, then I realized I could use it for so much more. And it kind of evolved into this huge way for me to actually be able to give back and help people. So it wasn't just about, this is how I survive. It's now, wow, because that was like my big thing. I kind of lost my identity in that I was, this isn't a good thing, don't do this. I was really wrapped up in my career. And that was, who I was. And that was kind of taken away overnight. And so, I had to figure out, well, geez, I'm 40 years old or 36 at the time. What can I give back, to people? And so it just turned into this process of me getting really, really good at it to be able to pass it on to other people. And I figured out that if I get all this knowledge in my brain, um, that doesn't do any good. I have to figure out how to make it into a tangible asset that'll last forever. Because I have a little bit of a shorter life expectancy than most people. I probably won't live as long, and that's okay. I'm okay with that because I'm very, very happy.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out a way to take what was in my brain and make it last forever. So I started looking into turning things into digital assets that'll be there forever. And so then I started teaching people, how to automate simple things like I do, and then how do we make it more complex and how do we build it? And I think I went off on a tangent, but yeah.
No, you're good. No, that you're good. No, and that's amazing. Again, so much great information. Let me ask you one thing, because I do want to talk about the things you're doing in terms of automating and your legacy too, right? Before that, though, how important it is to be here now, to live on today's moment, to appreciate today, right? Because again, I always hear about people complain about this or that. Yet when you're going through something as radical as you have, that second, that minute, that you have to appreciate it, and it's important. So how important is that for us, for people to appreciate that?
Yeah, there are no words to describe that,
Yeah.
because, we say take time to stop and smell the flowers, but
Yeah.
I never did, right? I was so
Right.
busy, with my job and things, and I'll get to it. I'll get to it someday. And now, um, every day that I have is a gift. And so I don't feel guilty anymore if it's nice outside and I decide I'm going to go for a half-hour walk just because it's nice outside and it smells like spring.
Mm.
I enjoy my cup of coffee. I take time every morning and just sit down, and um, I listen to a podcast every morning,
Mhm.
and I just sit there and I enjoy my coffee, and I do that for an hour. Now I know most people don't have that luxury. I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that. But for me, every single thing is huge. Um, you don't know what you have until it's taken away.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I would ask yourself this question. if you knew that you only had 10 years left to live, what would really be important? And everybody's like, oh yeah, okay, that's so nice to say, but seriously, like if you knew you only had 10 years and that was it, and that was all that was left, all of a sudden priorities get shifted and become very, very different. And things that weren't important all of a sudden become really important. And the stuff that you thought was so, so important, I have to meet that deadline, I have to answer that
Hmm.
email, I have to get that phone call, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
so if you'll give yourself the grace and the patience to enjoy life, and not just go through life
Mm.
trying to get ahead and get as far as you can, you'll find that you're a whole lot more relaxed and you actually really, really enjoy just the simple little things like fresh cut grass.
Right. Yeah. Now that's amazing. Again, it's not just going through life, it's growing through life and learning through life. And you're right. I mean, I remember when I was in corporate, I would always get so busy answering emails. I was always on the go, and I neglected even myself, my body, my health, the stress, because you were so busy just living in this grind. And I think that's many of us, right? We go through that on a daily basis, and we just stop for a second, and really, you got to stop and appreciate the moment we have right now, that second, because you just never know when it's gonna be taken away from you. So that is amazing to know that. So now let's talk about your legacy, right? So you're obviously building your legacy around, the around your life. Yet for you is more important than just your life, because one thing that I appreciate about you, and I listened to you on another podcast, is that you're creating something that you can leave behind for people. You're creating something that can help people in many aspects in their lives, and that's amazing. So what is that legacy that you're building and leave behind?
Yeah, so I kind of created two things.
Hmm.
The first thing that I think you're talking about is I created a podcast called Automate to Dominate.
Yep.
And so what we do is the goal of that is to create as many passive income streams as possible through automation and outsourcing.
Mm.
And so the goal is to go through all the systems in the background so that we're not spending 80 hours answering emails and catching up on phone calls and things. It's something we can set it and it not forget it, but it's, you know, passive
Sure.
income
Yeah.
that's coming in. And so that's actually been a lot of fun because I've
Mm.
got to talk to a lot of really cool people and I'm learning. And obviously, I'm not there yet. And that was the whole point of the project, right? It was, um, I'm not afraid to be, I'm not afraid to tell people I don't know it
Mm.
all anymore. Like I used to
Yeah.
be like, oh, I can't tell people that. They're going to think I'm a fraud.
Right.
And now I'm like, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out and it's
Right.
okay. So that was the whole point of that podcast was, you know what, this sounds like fun. I'm going to get to talk to a whole lot of people and we're going to figure out how to create, passive income through automation without you having to touch it. So that was kind of the first thing. And then before I had the stroke, I got really good at outsourcing,
Mm.
and I had a couple of businesses that I ran on the side. I was kind of like a hobby entrepreneurist, you could say, and I didn't want to just lose all that knowledge that I had in my brain. I wanted to be able to pass it off to people because it's such a huge opportunity to change so many people's lives, and that's what I didn't realize was when you hire somebody like in the Philippines, for instance, um, you get them at a very, very good rate in the United States, per
Hmm.
se. But then more than that, you're changing their life because even though it's a really good rate for us, it's an incredible rate for them. And it's able to like change not just their lives, but you usually find 3 to 4 generations in a house over in the
Mm.
Philippines. And so you're not just changing their life, you're changing their whole family's life
Wow. Yeah.
and you're empowering them. And so when I figured out, holy cow, each person that I'm able to hire, I'm able to make a huge impact, not only in they're also incredibly like relational people. They love to get together and eat. And so like Sundays is like a whole day, right? They go to church and then they eat and then they go home and go to sleep because it takes all day, right? And so they're able to actually give back to their community, and it starts this whole cycle that's just absolutely incredible. And I think if we knew how to outsource well, we would do it more. But so many people tell me, "Oh, I hired a virtual assistant and that didn't work out." Okay, there's probably a lot of reasons why it didn't work out, but
Right.
chances are you wanted them to be a mind reader, or
Mm.
maybe you didn't have the systems in place to train them. So anyway, I just through the years, I learned a lot about how to successfully outsource
Mm.
and to be able to accomplish many things while being an incredible boss and being a really good leader for them. And so I created a whole course called Running on Autopilot. And the course goes literally from where in the world do I go to even find a virtual assistant to what kind of job posting do I put up? How do I hire? What are red flags that I should be looking for when I'm hiring? Once
Mm.
I hire them, how the heck do I train them?
Yeah.
And now that I've trained them, how the heck do I figure out how to make sure that they're being honest? And how do I set up a virtual office? And how do I keep them motivated? And so it's literally the A to Z of
Mm.
everything that was in my brain from years and years and years of outsourcing to perfecting it and basically turning it into a little system where I just handed it off with the templates so people can plug and play. So hopefully
Mm.
the goal is we'll be able to change a ton of people's lives with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And obviously this is your new life. I mean, really a lot of the automation or outsourcing, right? So even like you were talking about earlier, in your house, you have uh, ways that you can remind yourself. So what are other things that you do like on your day to day? Like if you go into the groceries or just how do you remind yourself that people can maybe even use that, in their lives right now, like to make it more of an automatic type of process?
When I go to the grocery store, as soon as I walk in Walmart, my phone pops up and says, "Oh, here's your grocery list."
Mm.
And so what I've done is anytime anything like let's say I need milk or something, there's no way I'm going to remember everything.
Mm.
So rather than having to write it all down and keep
Hmm.
track of it and then I lose my list or whatever, I just ask Google to remember it
Mm.
and they put it on my shopping list. And so then my phone is smart enough to know that I'm at Walmart. A little creepy, right? But
Yeah, it is.
and then when I walk into Walmart, it dings and says, "Hey, here's your grocery list. Don't forget to get these things."
Mm.
Um, so that's something really simple that you can do. I think automating chores
Mm.
was something that was super helpful for me because I know if there was no way I could keep up with everything if I tried to do it all at once. I get about 2 to 3 good hours a day,
Mm.
and then that's it. My brain kind of goes to mush. Um, and so I had to break everything down into little tiny tasks. So um, Monday we vacuum. Tuesday we dust everything. Wednesday is sheets day, so the bed sheets get done.
Mm.
Thursday, one week is deep cleaning the bathroom, and then Thursday the next week is deep cleaning the kitchen. And so I have them set up as reminders in my phone, and so it just pops up and shows me exactly what to do, and that way I don't ever have to worry. The house is always clean
Mm.
because I've just taken 15 minutes every day and been able to do something, and then I'm able to stay on top of it. Um, what are some other things that I do to automate things? There's like a ton.
Yeah,
Um,
and with that one, that's actually pretty awesome because it's not only just reminding you of the things you have to do. You're also building discipline, right? I mean, by putting that into that schedule and having a disciplined schedule, it actually, I would imagine, it would free up more things for you to do because now you're not running with your head cut off, right? I mean, you actually have an idea of what you're going to be doing. So it actually helps you with your discipline too.
Yeah, and it keeps you super focused too.
Mhm.
So many times we lose so much time because we're trying to multitask, thinking
Right,
we're going to get so much more done. And I've learned that I get way more done if I don't multitask.
right.
I've learned to just be in the moment
Mm.
and do what I have to do and then move on and do something else. And I'm actually much more productive. Um, and that could be because I have a brain injury, but I would imagine it's probably good for others as well.
Right.
Um, but even something as simple as, if I, like, for instance, my podcast,
Mhm.
I automate as much as humanly possible with that. So I have,
Mm.
are you familiar with Zapier?
I am, after I heard you talk about it, so I need to look into that for sure.
Okay, yeah. So Zapier is awesome. So my goal is to basically be like Huckleberry Finn and pass off as much work as humanly possible and make somebody else paint the fence.
Yep.
Um, and so I have, when I record an episode, it will automatically, Zapier will send it to a company called Sonics AI, and then Sonics will transcribe it. And then once it's done transcribing, there's another Zap that sends it into a Google Drive folder where my virtual assistant goes in and knows it's there, and he's able to take it and then proofread it, upload it into uh, my website. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah.
And also put the video on YouTube, and then also upload the actual episode into Libsyn, which is
Mm.
which is my hosting platform. So I've created a process and tools where I literally just have to sit here and talk, and then at the end of the day, it's all done, because
Mm.
there's a system where it just goes boom, 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 and it just gets
So
passed right down the
yeah, so
trail.
really all you're doing is just doing you're doing the podcast, the recording, and after that it's all pretty much automated, right? From that perspective. And yeah, I was looking into that. I'm like, that's amazing. I need to do that because there's a lot that goes with it behind the scenes, right? And
Yeah,
so
podcasting can be a lot of work. People
it,
don't realize it. They
it
think you just
is.
get in front of a mic and talk.
No. It's a lot of work, and so I myself, I'm gonna be looking at those things that you mentioned last time that can help me with my podcast. Yet that's the same thing with anything, though, right? Anything that we do, right? You can do that with, if you're, you have if you're like a realtor agent or anything that where you're dealing with a lot of people and you have to send out a massive amount of emails, you can do that through different platforms, right? You want to give us more of those tips?
Yeah, so I think probably the greatest way I learned this was a book called Work the System by Sam Carpenter. And what it does is basically, if you could take your MBA and shove it
Mm-hmm.
in a book, that's basically what Sam did.
Mm.
'Cause what he does is he teaches you to look at the world through systems. He said every single thing you do is nothing more than a system and a whole bunch of tasks. And if you can break it down on the task level and then figure out, if you got hit by a Mack truck
Mm.
tomorrow, how does that task still get done? And if you can break it down into that simplest level and then slowly just start handing it off and figuring out, okay, is there a piece of software that can do this, or do I need another human to do this? But at its core, like, you look at, like, okay, let's take real estate agents, prospecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of it's automated, right? They can put things in an MLS and it
Mm-hmm.
sends out. But what about all the follow up? And then there's all the phone calls. And how about the scheduling to book the appointments? And it's just this time sucking, not amount of work that doesn't necessarily bring in any revenue. What brings in revenue is you being with a client, showing them a house, right?
Right.
But yet we need to do that to be able to get the client to the house.
Mm-hmm.
So enable to be able to, like, break that down at its most granular level. So we set up some type of lead magnet that's going to attract people. right? And typically we put that out there for free, and
Mm-hmm.
we have our VA going into, groups and on LinkedIn and Facebook and doing the networking side for us. And if we're even smarter, we'll set it up ahead of time and put it all in a company called Social Bee. So we really only have to do it once, and then it goes out literally, every day for a whole month because we've pre-scheduled it. But then in addition to that, don't check your email. Have your VA check your email, go through it all, summarize, send it to you, and then you get on and record audio. Don't type, record audio and tell them, hey, I want you to respond, this way, do this, do this, do this. They go through and respond to all your emails. So now instead of your email taking you 4 hours a day, it took you 15 minutes maybe, and you were able to get your personal touch to every single person. Then instead of trying to, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'll try and make it connect.
No, yeah, yeah.
Instead of going back and forth with your clients trying to schedule, use something like Calendly or Schedule Once. And don't you set it up, have your VA set it up, and have your VA, when they're emailing the answer, already give them what the client's going to ask for next, right? So anticipate, okay, here are the answers about the house. If you'd like to look at the house, here's the link to schedule to view the house. And it's already in there. They click on the link and find out what times. It sends them an invitation. It sends them 3 follow-up emails. You don't have to do any of the reminders, and you just show up. And then after, you can fire off a text to your VA or whoever and say, hey, followed up, can you put them in the follow-up sequence? And then they get 7 drip emails to stay top of mind. If you were to think about every single thing that you do that you don't have to be client facing, you don't have to have your face right in front of them, and take that huge system and then break it down into little tiny chunks, and then take each one of those chunks and break it down into little tiny tasks, and then slowly, this sounds awful, but slowly kill yourself. Like you no
Yeah.
longer can do it. You got to
Right.
figure out a way to get somebody else to do it, and then figure out, how we hand it off, and then just connect the dots, and you'll find your brain can never find the solution until you ask it the question. And so start asking it the right questions. Don't ask it, oh my gosh, why do I never have time? Ask it, how do I no longer have to do this task? How do I remove myself? And it's amazing because in just thinking about it and mulling it over, in like 2 days, your brain will be like, oh, well, what about this? Or what about that? And how could I do this? And so it's all about asking your brain the right questions versus, oh, I just can't do this.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's another thing that, again, if we were to take more time and talk to ourselves about the things that we're trying to accomplish, I think you can definitely find those answers. Now, many people might be asking, how expensive is it to outsource or to put systems in place, such as what you're talking about? Is that something expensive or relatively, inexpensive?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it has to do with the level of expertise that you want, right? But let's go back to our real estate agent.
Yeah.
Chances are you just need a regular virtual assistant to do that. You don't need somebody who has their PhD or something like that to be doing follow-up emails. So for something like that, you can hire that out for about $3 an hour. So you're looking at roughly $500 a month for a full-time VA for 40 hours a week. So what you have to ask yourself is, if I take this off my plate and I now have these extra 20 hours that I used to spend following up with prospects, does that get me in front of enough clients to make an extra $500 a month? If the answer is no, then you're not at the point where you're ready to hire a VA yet. You need to keep burning and churning and build up your prospect list. But if $500, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I could offload all this for $500, and that's like and most people should have outsourced yesterday. Honestly, they hold
Yeah,
on to it for way too long.
yeah.
Um, but in addition to that, the systems that I talked about, Social Bee is $19 a month.
Mm,
Schedule Once, I think, is $20 a month. And so I figure, can the piece of software, because if I'm paying, I have several VAs that are about $4 an
mm,
hour. And so what I ask myself is, okay, this is going to cost $20. So that's five hours that I
mm-hmm,
could have my VA do this. Is this going to accomplish more than 5 hours that my VA could do?
mm,
And if the answer is yes, then we have the software do it. If
mm-hmm,
the answer is no, it's more expensive than I could have my VA do it, then I have the VA do
mm.
it, if that
Yeah,
makes any sense at all.
yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, and then they're also, even if you're not prepared to do the outsourcing, there are systems that you can at least start doing, just one or two tasks for free too, right? I
Oh
know
yeah,
some.
absolutely.
There's some. So, what are some of those that even if we wanted to, like, maybe, and even if we don't have a business, like just in our regular life, like, again, I like the fact of being more, focused, being more disciplined. You even just doing your chores, right? Like, what are some of the things that we can do if without even spending a dime and just putting some process into place?
Yeah. So Calendly
Mm-hmm.
is a really good one, and that's basically an automatic scheduler, just like Schedule Once. It doesn't have as much bells and whistles, but you don't really need it to if you're, just using it for home and things like that. Um, the other one, what is, I want to say Hubstaff, and that is not correct. It
Mm.
is,
I
oh
haven't I
shoot.
haven't heard of that one, or otherwise I would help you with that.
No, that's okay. It's oh man, Basecamp. Holy cow.
Oh, okay.
Um, so Basecamp has a free option. I think you can use like up to 3 users. So really cool for getting your kids to schedule their chores,
Hmm.
right? Which most people wouldn't think of it like that, but you set it up once and the
Yeah.
kids have their phone and they just have to click if it's done, and then it goes in and says, okay, this is the allowance that you're going to get because you did this. And
Oh, that's
you
awesome.
know
That's pretty cool.
and keeps track of how much internet time and things like that. So um, most people wouldn't think of that as like a family tool, but it's awesome to use for that,
Yeah.
especially, and it's free, right?
Yeah.
So why not? um, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. um, Obviously uh, Google Assistant. There are, what are some of the other, man, if you want it to do it,
There's probably.
Google and figure out how, because chances are it can. Like, it's amazing all the
Mm.
things that it can do. um Trying to think of home. I'm much more better in the business world.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, no, that's good. So, what are some of the things on the business that we can probably look at that might be, relatively inexpensive or free, and then, as you have more revenue, you can scale up.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Calendly.
Mm-hmm.
um I would use definitely Basecamp.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like Basecamp, you can use Trello. They're like cards or whatever.
Mm.
Keeps things nice and organized. Zapier is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things that connect things. Like, for instance, let's say you had a Google form that was out there that was capturing leads for you. You can create a Zap that will put it into a Google Sheet
Mm.
automatically. And so you never have to transcribe it. You never have to do any of the like manual. And then from that sheet, you can actually dump it into your CRM system. And I believe there are some free CRM systems. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of
Mm-hmm.
one. I know there are, though. I think Salesforce has like a dumbed down version that you can use
Mm.
for free. But anyway, you could set up another Zap that'll take that lead and dump it right into your CRM. And then your CRM would trigger a whole system. So literally from the time they got that form, like they entered in the type thing, um, it goes through the internet world and it fires off an email saying, hi, thank you very much. Not only does it go into, your email, which happens automatically. Pretty much everybody knows how to do that. But it also will, send a reminder to your phone, hey, go ahead and follow up with this person. And it moves them through the funnel so that you don't have to think about it. And that's 9 times out of 10, we don't follow up with leads because A, we run out of time and we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off, or B, we lose the information because somehow it got lost and it didn't get to the right spot. So those are, if you can just set that up, that'll easily give you extra 10 to 15 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
Just doing that.
And what's your advice in terms of setting up, because you have to still set it up. Does it take a lot of time, or what is the approach to set up a process to begin with, and then, kind of like do it and forget it kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So with that, if you try and knock it all out at once, you'll get frustrated and you'll quit. So the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And so if you just every week set up one small step, right? And so maybe you time block 1 hour a week, and in that 1 hour you set up Calendly, and then the next week you set up a zap that goes from Calendly to your email or whatever, whatever your process is. And what happens is it becomes addicting because you end up freeing up some time that you didn't have. And so now, because you took that 1 hour, you've freed up 2 hours. And so now you have 2 hours to go through, and you spend 1 hour with your family, and you take that extra hour and you do it again. Well, now we've created 3 hours. And so it slowly builds, but don't try and do it all at once because you will be frustrated and you will quit. It's all about slow and steady wins the race. You don't have to have it set up overnight. Nobody does. If they did, they're lying. Just take one small bite at a time every week, and you will see compounding effects very quickly.
Got it. That's awesome. So definitely take your time, and maybe with that too, is as you find and you get more of that free time, that you're getting back, obviously, whether it's spending time with your family or building your business, getting more prospects, whatever it is, make sure you utilize that time, because that's the other thing too, that I can see people that possibly they get this time back and now they're like wondering, okay, what did I do now? And then that kind of goes to waste, right? So make sure you put that to productivity or something. So no, that's amazing. And then I just have one last question for you to ask you, or 2 more questions actually. Number one is, so you're talking about this autopilot program that'll be launching hopefully by the end of this month. How can people, if they wanted to get to this, how can they get to that program?
Yeah, so I have a link that I'm going to give to you.
Okay.
That if you're willing, you can put in the show notes.
Yep.
And then in the YouTube video, okay. And that link will take them right there.
Okay.
So if they wanted to find out information about that.
Awesome. And the last question I have for you is, obviously you've endured a lot and you've gone through a lot and you've learned a lot and you've done a lot of great things for yourself. What would be one advice that you can give our listeners as they're going through their own journey, their own struggles in being able to possibly overcome anything in their life?
I think the biggest thing would be to have patience with yourself. I think so many times we want it fixed yesterday. We live in the microwave world, right? Where you can, throw the soup in for 30 seconds and it's hot, and we take a pill and that fixes it. And sometimes it takes work, and sometimes we need to have grace for ourselves. A lot of times we're much harder on ourselves than we are on other people. And I think if you just give yourself permission to not be perfect all the time, and just every day try to get one step better than you were yesterday, those, I keep saying it, but those little tiny steps every day turn into huge, huge accomplishments if you'll just be happy with that one step and give yourself the grace to not have it all figured out yesterday.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. No, that's awesome. And where can people find you if people wanted to connect with you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of places. I'm usually on Facebook quite a bit, so you can find me there. It's Michelle Thompson. And then also, actually, you can't find me there. I have my profile hidden. Okay, so facebook.com/awesome outsourcing.
Okay.
All one word. You'll find the page, and then if you hit message from there, it goes directly to my personal messages.
Yeah.
And then also awesomeoutsourcing.com. My email address is Michelle, Michelle, at awesome, AWESOME, outsourcing, OUTSOUR. CING, thank you, .com. See, that's that whole focus thing. Yeah. So those would probably be the best ways to get a hold of me.
That's awesome. And I'm going to have all this information too for the ones that are listening and seeing this. I'll have all this information for you guys to definitely check out Michelle and, connect with her and look at her program for sure. So Michelle, the last thing I got to tell you is that you are truly a inspirational person, and you're truly, what is considered to be someone that can overcome anything in their life. And I really appreciate having you in the show. And just want to say thank you for being here. So I don't know if you have any last questions, any last comments for our viewers, but again, thank you so much for having you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I provided some value. I feel like I jumped all around today, so I'm sorry if it wasn't very sequential.
No, actually, I got a lot of great notes, and I'm sure our listeners are going to do the same thing. And I love the whole aspect of outsourcing. Definitely, I know I need to do that in my business, and people that are listening to us, they need to probably also do that too. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Cesar. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. And for the rest of you guys, thank you for watching. Please do me a favor. Make sure that you go to Spreaker.com, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Like us, share the video. Coming to this episode, please make some comments. We want to hear your feedback. And we definitely want to see you at the next episode at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Have a great day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.